we just practiced two different forms of mindfulness. And in my experience of the path, it's essential to integrate these. The aspect that we practiced first gave us a sense of what you might call unconditional happiness. So there is an experience of unconditional happiness. Unconditional happiness. Difficult to read, but you just need to be unconditionally happy with that. Just a reminder. It's a mnemonic device more than a piece of writing. It just reminds you what I said, even if you can't read it. And you see this is a U, this is probably an L. Unconditional. Two S's here at the end indicates that it says happiness. The rest of the word is more challenging. So there is a sense of unconditional happiness. The other form of practice gave us an insight into conditional happiness. Conditional happiness. Yes. Now you start to see patterns in my writing. So from now on, when you see a shape like that, you know it's an H. So, so let's say, just for a moment, that I gave a talk very much like this last week. Just so you know, I'm going to give it again because I think it's important. And I've worked on it a lot in the past week. So let's say that you have an experience in which things are the way you want them to be. Let's just say you had such an experience. Can you show it for whatever use that may have? It's a ritual. So let's say that things are the way you want them to be. So there are two aspects of things being the way you want them to be. One aspect is that things are the way, and the other part is that you want them to be. So this says conditional. So things are a certain way. You want things to be a certain way, and they in fact are that way. What does that look like? Well, you are having the thoughts you want to have. They're making sense. They have meaning. They're rational, powerful, compelling thoughts. Excellent. You're having the feelings you want to have. You're happy and or whatever you want to experience. Maybe you want to be angry, then you're angry. Maybe you want to be sad, so you're sad. Whatever it is, you're having the internal experiences that you want to have. Wonderful. And things around you are the way you want them to be. When you look around, you see people who you like. When you listen to what they're saying things that you agree with. When you look at them, they're doing the stuff you want them to do. That's great. So the conditions that you want exist. The ones you don't want don't exist. Maybe you don't want to be in pain. Well, you're not in pain. Maybe you don't want to be insecure. Well, you're not insecure. Maybe you don't want to be irrational. Well, good news. You're currently rational. So this is the condition that you want, right? It's really, really good. Furthermore, there's the you want portion. It's that I've given some things. You want this, in this particular example, for yourself. This is what you want for yourself. I want things to be this way, for my benefit. If things are this way for me, then I'll be happy. So it's a selfish, conditional kind of happiness. It's good kind of happiness. It's not bad. And in fact, it's so good that we'll call this the basic happiness. We'll refer to what I just described, the amount of happiness that you'd experience in that way, knowing, of course, that those conditions won't last for very long, naturally, and in fact, you won't last for very long. Of course, we know that. And yet, we can still refer to this as, quote, one unit of happiness. So let's call that happiness 1 unit. 1 unit. 1 unit of happiness. Yes, very good. It's quite exciting, isn't it? Yes? Very exciting. It's just a mnemonic device, don't worry. You know what a mnemonic device is? A mnemonic device is a way of remembering things. So you can't actually read it, but it will remind you of what I said. So it's a way of remembering. Excellent. Okay, well the question immediately arises, is there a way to increase that amount of happiness? Is it possible to have more than 1 unit of happiness? Is such a thing possible? Good news. Yes, it is possible. And in fact, people do it all the time. Don't we? Do it all the time. So let me draw that out for you. Bring it out a little bit more. So let's say that you were to care for other people. That would be nice, wouldn't it? No. We will draw that out. Let's take this out to 5. It's a little easier for me to draw. It's about 5. There we go. So now we're considerably less selfish. Right? It's exciting. It's still conditional. So what does this look like? Still conditional. And now we have happiness 5 units. Great. Okay. What does this look like? Well, this means that we decide, let's work for myself and others. Actually, in this example, it's for others. So I'm going to take care of myself and make things be the way I want them to be. I'm also going to make things be the way 4 other people want them to be. I'm going to take care of 4 other people. It'll be fun. So these other people, they would like to be rational. They're not. They're irrational. I'll help them to be more rational. We do this all the time. You know, someone thinks that things are a way that in fact they're not, and so we help them to see things in a more realistic way, which allows them to behave in more rational ways, which means that they're happier, they're more effective. Maybe people are feeling bad, so we go to them and we spend time with them and we make them feel less alone and more loved, and so they're happier. Maybe people like flowers, so we give them flowers. Maybe they like books, we give them books. Maybe they like clothes, we give them clothes. Whatever it is that the people want, the conditions that the people want, we give that to them. And we're also taking care of ourselves at the same time. And so now we've expanded our happiness from 1 unit to 5 units. We've increased our happiness by 500%. Does this happen? Yes, this happens all the time. People do this all the time. In fact, connection and friendship, as one category, is the best indicator of a person's happiness, according to studies. Am I right? The therapist in the room? Yes. So this is scientifically proven. People are made to be connected, and being connected and caring for others and actually doing things to help others to be happy is the most effective way for us to increase our level of happiness according to those studies. That's great, because this is a completely accessible method. We all know how to do this. Everyone knows how to do this. So if we want to be happy, we can be. And furthermore, if we want other people to be happy, we can do something to affect that. Isn't that magnificent? Cause for celebration. Okay. Someone might say though, well wait a second, hold on. I don't care much about other people. Okay, no problem. We have another approach. Don't worry. You don't have to care about other people to be happy. It's great. We have another way for you to have 5 units of happiness. So you're still selfish. Very good. No problem. It's fine. I have another way. Just make sure that your happiness is less conditional. What could that mean?
That you do it all the time.
What?
That you do it all the time.
Do what all the time?
Practice it.
Yeah, exactly. You practice all the time. That's right. So that's exactly right. So we did a practice earlier that gave us the opportunity to be willing to experience whatever we're experiencing. The second practice was the one I went over first, of course, and that is that we care for others. We care for as many others as possible, and we notice that that makes us happy, that love and the experience of joy are deeply connected. So we did that second. The first exercise we did was this one, and that is whatever we're experiencing, be willing to experience it fully. Be unconditionally willing to have certain experiences. Now, you might say, okay, I understand the one about caring for other people, but how is it possible really to be happy with the conditions that I'm not happy with? It's a good question. Well, good news. Psychological studies come to our rescue again. Because it's shown that individuals tend to have something called happiness homeostasis. Am I right? Yeah, we have happiness homeostasis. That means that it's very difficult to change how happy a person is. It's very difficult. So let's say that you have a tragic event occur in your life. You think that it's destroyed your life. In fact, you claim that it's destroyed your life. Good news. A few years later, in all likelihood, you're going to be just as happy as you were as before that tragic thing happened. Did the tragic thing happen? Yes, it did. This is something people forget, as amazing as it might seem. We forget that the tragic thing still happened. It did happen. The tragic thing did happen, but we're happier. What does this mean? Well, it means that our happiness is less conditional. It means that we have a kind of happiness that's less dependent upon conditions. It's very unusual that an event occurs that changes how happy a person is. Why? Because in fact people have enormous control over how conditional their happiness is. If conditions change, then we tend to change how conditional our happiness is in order to keep our happiness at the same level. It's very interesting. And we do this all the time. We're actually incredibly talented at this. But what I'd suggest is that instead of, let's say something bad happens, so then you accept that, and then after a little while you're just as happy as you were before that terrible thing happened. What would happen if you did it again without a terrible thing happening? Then you could just double your happiness right away. You've got it, double it. Well, good news. You could do it again. And then you would triple your happiness. So it is entirely possible to have this five-fold, 500% increase in happiness. So we have 5 units of happiness simply by accepting things just as they are 5 times as much. Then we'll be 5 times as happy. It's incredible. It's completely possible. Everyone here knows how to do this. Now, this one people do all the time. We care for each other quite often. This one people almost never do except to maintain happiness homeostasis. So homeostasis means your happiness level doesn't really change. You go through your life and you're pretty much just as happy the whole time. People actually are shown to become slightly better at this with time, because we do get a little bit happier as we get older in general. But it's rare that a person would have this kind of change, even though, as I say, it's completely possible. All right, great. Wow.
Could you repeat that last part?
Well, people are shown in studies to become happier with time. Most people get a little happier as we get older. But it's rare that a person would use that skill to increase their happiness 5-fold, to become much, much happier. That's rare. But it's possible. My point is it's possible. It's just rare. Does that make sense?
I don't know.
To increase their happiness is possible.
Oh, okay.
That's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But wait. You might say, hold on a second. Do we have to stop there? Couldn't you put those together? Couldn't you? Couldn't you put them together? And work so that 5 people, including yourself, would experience a kind of happiness that is open to 5 times as many different sorts of conditions. Yes. See this again? So, I'm going to need a little more space. Just write this a little bit smaller and a little bit less neat. Amazing. And there we are. This is happiness. 25 units. Unbelievable, right? Blow your mind. So I need to, sorry, I'm not quite there yet. So this is less conditional and less selfish. So this would mean that we have the desire, and that we actually succeed at, helping 5 people, including ourselves, to experience a kind of happiness that's 1/5 as dependent upon conditions. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing, yes. It is amazing. It really is amazing that such a thing is possible. let me tell a story about, a couple of stories about two of the great figures within Buddhist history. In terms of this less selfish mode, there's a book which I think the title is often translated as The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva. Is that how you typically translate the title?
Another translation is the Bodhisattva's Guide to a Way of Life.
Yeah, excellent. Bodhisattva's Guide to
A Way of Life.
A Way of Life. Yeah, great. It's by a great Tibetan monk named Shantideva. And the Bodhisattva is a person who bases his or her life on something called bodhicitta. And bodhicitta in this particular usage, is referring to deep, vast compassion. And Shantideva describes very carefully how it is that the more we commit ourselves to caring for others, the happier we become. And that happiness is a guide. That happiness guides us. It's like a compass. It carries us to more and more ethical behavior and also even more happiness. So Shantideva lays out the ways that we change our behaviors, lays out the ways we change our commitments, and he shows very carefully that it's possible for us through the constant cultivation of love for all beings to overcome the thing which, in my experience, in my life and also as a teacher, is the number one hindrance to effective living. And that is shame. We are often enslaved by a deep sense of insecurity and shame, which handcuffs us and prevents us from behaving in ways that are rational, that are loving. That shame comes from various directions, but it's possible to deal with it directly. It's possible to face it head on and work with it. And there are two basic approaches. One is that shame arises and we actually welcome it. Excellent, shame. Thank you for coming. Welcome. What can I do for you? And we develop a relationship with the shame, with that deep, abiding insecurity. And we gradually, without fighting against the shame, welcome in other folks into the conversation. Might welcome in some happiness. Happiness, come on and join in here. And some gratitude. Why don't you join and have some tea also? And love and commitment to positive ideals. And we gradually, we don't fight against the shame, but we simply fill up the dinner table with a bunch of other folks, one by one. And we cultivate relationships with those folks too. So that more and more we do just what we did in the practice this evening. We have a deeper and deeper relationship with love, with a commitment to service, with gratitude, with joy, happiness, and security. We deepen those experiences so that we gradually replace the dominant aspect of shame with other experiences. We just replace it. We cultivate those experiences one by one. Okay, very good. That's half of the path. But in my experience personally and also working with other people, I find that this isn't enough. This doesn't do it. There needs to be behavior change. It's essential that there's behavior change, because in changing our behavior even a little bit, we prove that we can change our behavior. And if it's possible to change our behavior a little bit, then we can't deny that it's possible to change our behavior more. And if it's possible to change our behavior more, then it means that we can't believe anymore that I am like that. We just don't believe it anymore, because it's not rational anymore. We changed our behavior. That means that that behavior isn't who I am. It can't be anymore. I just proved it. There's an absolute bulletproof proof that I must not be that behavior. I must not be the kind of person who would do that. Because look, I'm the kind of person who does this. I just did it today. I know that with certainty. And even if there's just a small change, that indicates that any sort of change is possible. So Shantideva goes over very carefully the experience of cultivating the commitment to be of service to all beings, and then actually making behavioral changes that gives us the confidence to overcome shame, to overcome a deep insecurity that seems to me to be the underlying, this might sound pessimistic, but in my experience, this is the underlying emotion of the human race, at least in modern times, at least nowadays. I don't think it was always this way, but it is, as far as I can tell, in the modern world. Okay, very good. What about the other? Well, I'll tell you a quick story. Just very quick tonight. There was a monk who we'll call for now Rinzai. Rinzai, as many of you know, trained under Obaku. And he went to Obaku and asked Obaku, what is the ultimate purpose of Buddhism? And even before he could finish asking the question, Obaku had hit him with his stick and chased him out of his room, chased him away. Rinzai went back 3 times and asked Obaku, what is the purpose of Buddhism? And Obaku 3 times hit him with his stick and chased him away. And so Rinzai, even Rinzai gave up. And he left the monastery, and he went to another teacher who knew Obaku, and he asked that teacher if he might stay there. And that teacher said, well, of course, it's very wonderful to speak with someone who's trained with Obaku. We trained together a long time ago. I'm very interested, what sort of teaching does he give nowadays? And Rinzai said, I don't know. I have no idea. I went and I tried to ask him a question. I asked him, what's the purpose of Buddhism? But even before I could finish asking the question, he hit me with his stick. And Taigu, the master there, said, I knew from my many years of being with Obaku that he's very kind. But I didn't know he was that kind. I didn't know he had such extraordinary kindness as that. And at that moment, Rinzai completely broke through his experience of insecurity. Completely broke through it. And experienced a kind of happiness that was not in any way dependent on conditions. A happiness that could never be lost. And that is the extraordinary, inconceivable kindness that Obaku was giving him. This is unconditional happiness. That this is just an experience. This is the experience of being hit with a stick. If we experience that fully, without going to what's wrong with me, without leaving the experience of just being hit by a stick to what's wrong with me, if we just experience that, then that's not an experience of suffering. There's pain without suffering. And if there's no suffering, then what's left? There's wonder, there's joy, there's love, there's compassion, there's the ability, if we know how to fully experience this, to directly realize that as long as I'm fully experiencing this, I will be okay. Which means that 100% of my energy can go to serving others. I don't need to put any energy into taking care of myself anymore, because I know that whatever happens, if I don't fight with it, it'll be okay. Even dying, if we don't fight against it, is an experience of wonder and joy. It's our greatest gift. We give back this body that we've borrowed for a few years. It's a statement of extraordinary love. And love is joyful. So Rinzai experienced that level of joy, a joy that could not be lost. It was unconditional joy. And then gave himself to, for the rest of his life, to find a way to cultivate this greatest of happiness, of developing the kindness that Obaku had shown to him, to give that to others, so that others also could experience that same vast, selfless joy. So I hope that these two examples, told very shortly, I could talk about both of these individuals for many hours, and both of them deserve that. But for this evening, I think that that cursory description of their paths and their teachings is enough. What's most important is that the practice that we just did is effective. We just practiced how to do this, how to increase our happiness in these two dimensions. We just practiced that. So now we know how to do it. We know how to do it. It isn't something theoretical and distant and abstract anymore. We have a practice that is effective at these two expansion transforms of happiness. We know how. So please, as you go through your life, know that these methods are to be done. They are to be practiced. In practicing them, they have their effects. In giving our time and our energy to them, there is an impact. And as I say, we have the two methods now. It's possible to attend to this experience, accepting it fully, releasing it fully. It's possible to bring up a vow that more and more holds in love all living things, and to experience the joy of that, and to tell ourselves that story. I live by this vow. Then we experience such happiness that we feel that we're becoming that story, so that we tell that story with our lives. This is tangible. We know how to do it. We just did it. And as we move forward in this path, there is no question that if we practice, this happiness will continue to expand, will continue to grow for the benefit of all living things. Thank you for doing this practice. Thank you for your contribution to this community of practice together.